This time in Goss's garage, we have Rick Robinson from American High Performance in Morton, Virginia, and he's back to talk exhaust headers with us. Rick, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Pat.
All right, now, exhaust headers are this big mystery to a lot of people. First, what are we talking about when we're talking about an exhaust header?
You're right. Most people know that it's supposed to do something good for me, but they have no clue what it does. If we go back to the history of exhaust headers, they were pretty mundane stuff. It was just there to get that nasty burnt stuff out of the motor. And if we look up front here, what we've got right here is your classic old cast iron log, as we called it. This particular one is off of a 66 Mustang 289. So this
66?
A 66. This piece right here is 50 years old.
Well, that's impressive durability.
Almost older than you, Pat. But and that's the great thing about them, and why the manufacturers stuck with them for so long. They're easy to make. It's cast iron. You just pour it into a mold, and it lasts a long time. This thing has been in service for 50 years. I could bolt it onto a motor today, and it would just work just fine.
Yeah, but it's not that efficient.
From efficiency's perspective, no. That's not what they were looking for. They were looking for cheap to make and durable. Because we weren't building cars that were, big horsepower cars at the time that had to worry about that.
Okay.
Now,
this is the next evolution.
That's the next evolution. In the early 80s, as the Fox Body Mustang started to evolve, it was quite a little performance car in its day, and Ford wanted to get some more out of that 302, so they started focusing on things like exhaust. And this is a actual set of what are known today as Shorty Headers, tubular headers, that were out of the factory on the Ford Mustangs. They're not the greatest in the world in terms of today's design. There's a lot of restrictions in here, particularly right here at the flange, the way the bends are made and so forth, but it's a whole lot better than that cast iron thing.
Right. All right, now these have more or less gone away in favor of this guy right here.
In today's cars, we're seeing almost everything built in stainless steel, and in many cars today have this type of tubular header that you have there. That particular one, again, off of a Mustang. Not that I favor Mustangs, but I happen to have them in the shop. This particular one is particularly neat because it's what they call the tri-Y design. Ford adopted this for the Coyote motors and the new Mustangs because it produces a lot of mid-range torque. It gives you a nice flat torque curve in the mid-range, and that's what they wanted out of that car, so that when you're driving it around on the street and you step into it, it's going to pull.
All right, now when you say tri-Y, that means a Y here, a Y back here, and a third one here.
Correct. It's also kind of a triple transition. It goes from 4 pipes into 2 pipes into a single pipe at the back.
Now, this one is moderately efficient, I take it.
It is. It is. You can see that the diameter of the tubes is larger than this one. So I'm able to get those gases out better. It's not overly large for the size of this particular motor. As it goes into this transition, it goes into a slightly bigger tube, so I'm putting double the gas in there. I give myself a little more volume, but try to keep the velocity going as I get down towards the final collector.
Okay, now let's get this out of the way. And let's bring this over here. This is what we're talking about when we're actually talking about headers today.
Right. This is a great example of your typical Shorty header in today's aftermarket. You can see a nice smooth bends on the tubes, collected at the rear. It's not what we call the equal length headers. And when they say equal length, they're talking about the length of these tubes. When you think about each one of those cylinders firing in order as they do, ideally you'd want all of those firing pulses to arrive here at the collector at the same time. In their sequence,
right.
Rather than getting there together and running into each other, which is the purpose behind the equal length headers. This one we have space constraints to deal with. That motor, this has to fit between the motor and the shock tower up in the engine compartment. Not a lot of room there. So you don't have room for these spaghetti twisting equal length headers.
Okay, this is a Shorty header. Let's bring the big beast over here and take a look at this. This is a long tube header.
Yeah, this is the big bubba for the real high performance motors, where you really want to get a power gain out of your exhaust application. You're going to get the most power increase out of these, mostly because of the length of these tubes. In the fact that it'll maintain the velocity of the exhaust longer as it exits the engine and goes down this long tube before it all comes together down here at the collector. The more I can maintain that velocity in that tube, the more exhaust gas I'm going to pull out of that cylinder behind it.
Key word, you said pull, because
Pull.
when this is done right, it's actually like a vacuum cleaner sucking the exhaust out of the engine.
As that pressure wave from that initial release of gases out of the cylinders goes down the pipe, it's actually creating a vacuum behind it, as long as it maintains its velocity. And that acts as a scavenging or suction to get the exhaust gas out of the cylinder and bring the new charge of fuel air into the cylinder through the intake valve as well.
So these do quite a job, but these aren't for everybody, because this is going to be a nightmare in some applications to install and make fit and so on.
Right. People kind of get a little nervous when we tell them it's going to take us 8 hours to put their headers in, and because we have to practically pull the engine out of the car in order to get them in there. Very tight quarters in today's cars. You can see that by the design of this one, they try to keep it very compact, try to keep the tubes close together so that it'll fit in between the engine and the frame. The other factor is you look at where the flange is on this one compared to where the flange is all the way down there on that end. This is designed to bolt directly up to your stock exhaust, just like this one did. This one, of course, is not going to.
So you have to modify the down pipes and intermediate pipe and so on with it.
All of that mid pipe that was in between here and the end down here has to be cut out and everything refabricated. The catalytic converters, if we're going to retain those, have to be relocated downstream.
Okay, all right, so there's a lot more to all of this than meets the eye. You don't just buy a set of headers. One of the misconceptions that we hear all the time is gotta have big 2-inch tubes.
Right, bigger the better, right?
Yeah.
Well, in some things, yes, but in headers, that's not the case. Again, it's all about velocity. I want to maintain the velocity of that exhaust pulse as it goes down the tube so that it's pulling everything behind it. If I come out of the exhaust port and dump it into a 2-inch pipe, it's going to expand immediately and slow down. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't help you.
You want the speed
that doesn't
to
help you.
Create the vacuum, the pulling effect, the scavenging effect.
Mm-hmm. And if we put different size headers on the same motor on a dyno, for example, and we're measuring the actual torque output of the engine, what you'll see is that as the diameter of the pipe increases, the torque peak is going to move higher and higher into the RPM range. At some point, you're going to get it out there where it's not helping you at all. You're never reaching the torque peak of the motor as it accelerates, and it's going to cost you a lot down low. So when you're trying to lug it off of the line there at the stoplight, you lose all of that grunt that you had to pull away.
So that would suggest for a lot of people, because the torque peak is going to be lower on a Shorty like this, that if you're trying to improve your daily driver that's in traffic and stop and go and things like that, the Shorty might actually be your better choice.
Could very well be, particularly if this is not a supercharged car. It's just a good performing street car. The Shorty is probably the better way to go.
How much, on average, how much horsepower are we going to gain?
In a long tube header, we typically see anywhere from 25 to 40 horsepower gain. with these, depending on the motor. And of course, in today's computer-controlled cars, it has to be tuned in order to gain that as well.
Right. So you don't just bolt these on and have immediate results without anything else going on.
Correct.
All right, now, we also see mild steel and stainless steel. I don't think there's much of a question there, but...
Absolutely. Stainless steel is the way to go. In today's modern cars, the entire exhaust is being made out of stainless steel, all the way back to the tip. It's great for you as the consumer because that exhaust is not going to rust out like the older exhaust would. They'd be gone in 3 or 4 years at best. Stainless steel will probably last you the life of the car. Headers are particularly important because they undergo so much heat stress. The temperatures here at the exit point can be over 1,000 degrees. And that combination of heat and all of the moisture and around here, the salt from the roads and things like that, will just eat up a set of mild steel headers, even if you've painted them ahead of time, because the paint's not going to hold up to the heat.
All right, now, another thing that is often questioned is coated versus non-coated headers.
The coating does more than just make them look pretty like these two do. It's great in today's cars, particularly if I'm building a guy a nice street car that he's going to take to car shows and everything. Wants it to look nice, wants it to keep looking nice. This silver ceramic coating that is on these two headers will keep it bright and shiny for the life of the car. Even bare stainless steel headers will discolor and kind of turn reddish brown over with age. This will maintain its appearance, but its most important effect is heat retention. We want to maintain the heat within the tube for 2 reasons. One, so it doesn't get out in the engine compartment and heat up the engine compartment and melt wiring harnesses that go by it and things like that. But also because that heat is part of the energy of the exhaust pulse as it goes down the tube. We want to keep that in the tube, keep that velocity going, keep the energy in that exhaust pulse all the way out to the end, and not let that heat escape and let the gas contract and slow down.
So we want quality headers. You have to make the decision between long tube and short tube, which makes the most sense for you and the way you drive in your car and all of that. We want stainless steel. Ideally, they should be coated. What else?
Again, the most important factor is that tube diameter. Don't get sucked into more is better. Buy the right one that's sized for your car. Trust the designers who build the quality headers to have done the testing and know that this particular one is going to be the best for your motor.
Now, on good quality headers, there's a whole lot of engineering that goes into designing them, where with low quality headers, it's just something that fits.
That's right. If I can make it look cool and fit in the car and make it cheaply, I'll make a lot of money on it.
There you go.
A lot of testing that goes into these as well. We talked about dyno testing before. Every good header manufacturer out there has a big testing department, and they dyno test every one of these on an engine before they finish it up and market it to you.
Rick, I want to thank you. How can people get in touch with you?
You can find us on the web at AmericanHighPerformance.com. You can reach us by phone at 703-339-7412. And we have an online web store with all the best performance parts at AmericanHighPerformance.biz.
And if you have a question or comment, drop me a line at radio@goss-garage.com.